This is Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. An informal chats with top business moguls as they share their stories of failure and success in a fun and relaxed way. Get entertained, educated, and unlock the secrets to success.
Welcome to Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. We're back with our wonderful guest, Andrea Bednar, who's the founder of AndreaBednar.com. You are a consultant, an author, a speaker. You're a thought leader. And I am excited to have you back on the program.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm happy to be here.
You ended by giving me a wonderful compliment. And it's interesting. You mentioned that I have an opportunity to speak more and engage and offer more of my insight. And when I was in high school, I was in the math club and the engineering club. I am very reserved by nature.
Yes.
But I also enjoy helping people and others figure out their journey, which is why we began this program, bringing people like you who can share that voice and that energy and that passion for business. So I'm excited to have you back on again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you're telling me about starting the business and what you focus on. You have a pretty good contingency of business in the oil and gas industry and engineering and construction, but I understand your purpose and methodology is really helping people to figure out their journey, but you do it from a very positive way, from a very positive perspective. Walk us through just really quickly. Your purpose is in doing is the name of your book, and conscious doing. Tell our listener again as we open this program what conscious doing is and how you help companies reach that goal.
Yeah. So everybody knows that most of us are just doing too much lately.
Yes.
People are really busy. No one I talk to is like, oh, life is good. I'm hanging out. Even the retired people are busy, right?
That's
They've got their organizations they belong to and volunteer with and all of that. And, maybe they go on vacation and they relax a little bit on vacation, but they come back and then they're really busy again, right? Yeah. And so people are trying to figure out how to slow down.
Okay.
We don't actually believe that's the pathway. Maybe you need to slow down, but if you use it as an answer, then you're just going to try and slow down.
Right.
That's one action, but that's not necessarily the most awake thing you could do. Maybe you need to be even busier than you are. But what happens is that people lose their consciousness, if you will, as soon as they get into the busyness. Then they become very focused on what they're doing, the activity of what they're doing. What we're saying conscious doing is marrying all of the being aspect with the doing. Okay. So when I'm doing something, I'm not just doing it. I'm considering, who do I want to be while I do this?
Right.
What's the other part of myself? Can I come from being joyful while I am trying to type all this into a spreadsheet? Right. Can I be thoughtful and kind while I am having to deliver how our organization is going to reorg and some of us might not be here in 2 weeks, right? Because most people are too focused on the content of their doing, not the context.
So you think sometimes we get kind of wrapped up in the task, if you will, of taking on a business and managing a business and not really on the content and quality maybe. Right?
Not on the context.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
So even this, we find this true with leaders all the time. They know what the message is they have to convey, and they work very hard on getting the words right. Well, great. That is good, right? But they don't give people what is the context inside of which I am giving you this information. Right. But if you don't do that, people will make up a context.
That's true.
Right? The context is, what's the orientation to this? Right. What's the background for this?
Perspective.
It's the why are we doing this? Right. And we don't give people that. So can you know what's the why of my doing?
Right.
Is my doing inside of a why? If it's not, or if I don't know what it is, maybe I shouldn't be doing that.
Now, in what stage would a company typically find you? Like, where do you think, what stage in a company or person's evolution do you think they really need to come and find an Andrea?
Well, it kind of depends on the founder, the person, or the leadership team.
Okay.
Right? So generally, we don't work with startups. We absolutely could and should. But any startups that have gotten venture capital or PE or something like that, we don't find that venture capital or PE will support financially the work that if we were brought in the beginning could really make a difference for a startup, right?
I agree.
But they have to go with what the venture capital and the PE tell them.
Sure.
Right? So
they may like that context that you mentioned, because I think you're right. It's so many startup founders, they do not last through the transition of the organization.
No.
And I think it's for the exact reason that you described. They need it, which would, I think, make it their longevity much, much better. But after a while, the company kind of outgrows their capabilities.
That's right. So generally, when people find us, is they get a referral about us from someplace else, people who've worked with us, right? So maybe they worked with us in a coaching situation. Maybe I've worked with somebody as a thought partner, which generally is kind of a hybrid coaching thought partner kind of thing. Maybe they read the book. Maybe they heard me give a talk or a speech somewhere. Generally, they don't find us through advertising or whatever, right? I mean, that's too bad because we would love it if it were that easy, but it's not. But mostly we also find that if you're going to work with somebody who's going to support you thinking through the big picture for your company, the system of your company, the orientation and the context, you probably want to know that person.
Sure.
So getting it through word of mouth is actually really helpful.
Right.
I mean, we are at AndreaBednar.com, but, and you'll see some things out there that we might be interested or intrigued by, but you're going to need to talk to us. Part of the reason for that is there is no matter how much people have a program in a box, there is no program that's so well designed that every single company doing it could do it exactly the same way and have it turn out for their company. So everything that we do is custom. Yes, we have some things that transfer over that we do with most companies.
And I love hearing you say that. And I think in the last discussion we had when you spoke about your book, I used to say this all the time, that if everyone can read a business book and achieve the level of success described in the book, then it would be a lot easier. But because our businesses, not that they're completely unique, but we have some nuances that make us unique, you need it a little more customized.
Exactly. And what's the orientation of the founder or the senior leadership team?
Correct.
So we end up working with companies that are about mid-sized. We tend to find, this is not scientific, this is totally anecdotal, but we tend to find somewhere between 200 and 700 people is where people really need to start working with us, right? We absolutely work with companies that are smaller than 200. And we find that companies over 700, we work with a lot of companies over 700 people. But then we tend to work in a division. And the reason for that is the bigger you get, the minute you hit 700 people, you have to move into more of a bureaucratic company. Just the number of people requires it, the way that laws work for how many employees you have and stuff like that, right? If when we work in a division, and even if they have 2,000 people, they still have a little bit more autonomy than Coca-Cola does. And that allows us to actually have people do some more free thinking, out of the box stuff. Well, maybe we could do this. Maybe we could try that. Let's try an experiment. So that's pretty much
What does your first visit to an organization look like? Now you've signed the agreement and you walk through the door. What does it feel like when you first walk in? Like, who are you working with? What's your first action?
Yeah. So generally, before we walk in any doors, we have hour-long Zoom conversations with everyone on the leadership team or whoever it is that's hiring us. And if there's a specific thing they need us to do, then we will ask to interview the key leaders inside of whatever the thing is that they want us to work on, right? And when we do each of these interviews, we are connecting with each of the people, because if we're going to work with them, we want them to know us, but we want them to know us confidentially. We want them to be able to say whatever they want to say. We never reveal the confidences in those, so people can say anything. But what we will tell people we will do is we will compile a slide that says, here's what we heard.
Sure.
We will not put anything on that slide that only one person said,
Right.
because everybody knows who that is then, right?
They do.
So we'll say, here's what we heard. This is never news to the people who hear it, right? They always know. But what they haven't seen before, nobody's actually done, is put it all in one slide.
Right.
And said, now when you see all this together, how does this land on you?
Right.
What does this tell you about your company? We rarely have to tell people much about their company. They know.
And that's so true.
Yes, and nobody sat down and got the dirt from everybody. They're looking at numbers and things like that. We're looking at what is people's experience.
Right. What's been one of the most unique outcomes of one of those sessions? Is there anything that kind of comes to mind? Because you're right, if a company hadn't done that, and I've been through quite a few of those, if a company hadn't done it, sitting in that meeting, it's a really interesting dynamic that happens. Mm-hmm. But anything that stands out as just something that you read or felt from that kind of initial conversation when you bring to light, something that they already knew, but they hadn't seen it together like that?
Well, this was a very positive thing, but I almost never get very positive things out of those, so that's why this was unusual. I was working with 3 different companies who were all working on a big construction project together. Okay. One was the owner company, 2 were vendor companies, and actually there was a couple of one-off people in the group, right? So I'm showing them the slides and everything. Sure. And I said, what do you guys see out of this? And they looked back and they said, we don't really see anything. Okay. Right. Okay. So that was unusual. And I said, I'm going to give you my point of view, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong about why I think you don't see anything.
Interesting.
I think the reason is because you all are working together in a way that is so unusual, nobody even knows what to make of it.
Oh, wow.
No one is complaining about any of the rest of the people in the room.
Right.
You guys already have figured out some ways that they were at what's called 30% engineering. So you know what that is, right? So they were a little ways along, right? So they'd worked together for about a year at that point. Okay. But almost always that's where the stuff is hitting the fan, right? They had worked together with a certain way of working. The guy who was the project manager on the company who hired me, which was not the owner, was actually a fantastic leader, which was why he brought me in the first place, was because he's already somebody who would do something like that. He's not in survival. It's not broken, right? So we were able to create something that I haven't been able to do anywhere else, which is to look at how do we capitalize rather than just say, hey, you guys have it handled, go home, great day working with you, but to say, how do we capitalize on what is invisible to you that really works?
Well, that's interesting. If you don't mind me teasing that out a little, the idea of you working with 3 independent organizations that are working together on a project, why do you think he brought you in for that specific group of people versus it just being employees and leaders in one group?
Right. They had a requirement as part of their contractual agreements that they do what they call a partnership meeting. Okay. So they always bring the partners together. Usually they kind of, have a lunch and people shake hands and stuff like that. And I had said, because I'd been working with the guy, he was in a leadership development program that I was leading. His company had offered it. And I was doing one-on-one coaching with him. And I just said, hey, let's talk about your partnership meeting. I can give you some ideas about how you might construct that and how you might lead it. Right. And as we talked about it, I said, I think you need some basic ground rules. Like, here's how we're going to work together. Here's what happens when, something doesn't go right. Here's how we're going to be together, how we're going to deal with it, all of that. And at the end of the conversation, he said, why don't we just have you come lead it?
I love it.
I said, well, I would love to do that, but you could lead it. Right. Right. Now, I'm not trying to not do the work, but I'm not trying to take advantage of people either. I want people to know that they are capable. And he said, no, but I'd rather be in the meeting, which, by the way, is a lot of reason we end up facilitating is because leaders should be a participant in their meetings. I agree with you there. They should not try to facilitate them. I know people do that because they're trying to save money or they think they can. And maybe they're great facilitators, but
Right.
if they should be a participant, that's what they should do.
I agree with you. I think you need them in the audience to experience the whole process. But I asked because I worked in construction for one of the largest residential developers in the country, and I had a pretty large area with hundreds and hundreds of subcontractors. We call them trade partners. And I'm thinking back, we were going through a major transition during the housing and financial crisis. But to have had what you just described in one of those partner meetings probably would have been very, very good, because everyone was struggling with the whole global economy melting down. But to have someone to kind of walk us through, and we had some fantastic subcontractors, they're just wonderful people. But I can see that being a very fruitful engagement.
It really was. And then they started asking me back to do all the partner agreements every time one came up.
Okay.
Right? Because they said, one, they had the same owner on different projects.
Right.
And the owner said, we really think you should have her back.
Right.
Because this is what's happening. This is what we're able to do. And not all of the projects were where that one was. That one was really an anomaly. Some of the other ones, there was already problems, right?
That's cool.
So, yeah, it was really interesting to do that. And even though it was in their contract before they knew about us or anything like that, right? This is what I think. This is where companies who are not in that industry need to steal those ideas.
Agreed.
Why don't we have partnering meetings?
Right.
Right? And why are they not called partnering meetings?
Right.
Where you bring these people together. People are working with vendors all the time.
They do.
Why not have a partnering meeting versus just let's hammer out how we're going to fulfill our contract?
Right. Yeah, and you're right. I became a certified trainer, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, before having that role. I was a supply chain role. And you made me think I had a need to redo all of our scopes of work for the way we built and the materials that we use. So what I decided to do for each of the 58 categories, scope categories, is to bring the leaders for each category. So whether it was drywall or paint or the other categories, bring in the leaders within those expertise. And we sat around the table and discussed how we can make the process more efficient, our process of construction more efficient. And it reminds me of what you mentioned. It wasn't an opportunity to say this subcontractor is doing something great or not. It was, how do we continue to make that improvement? And that would be, I don't think very many construction companies, as you mentioned, have that kind of exercise. And it was, the other piece is that I wasn't an expert in all of those areas, so I needed them. But they were willing to share that knowledge. And they needed to understand from me that this wasn't a chance for them just to pick apart the process. It was really, how do we look forward and identify the best method and the best materials to continue constructing our home. So, and
to articulate what is the future we see when it turns out beautifully.
Right.
What does that look like, sound like, feel like? Who are we? Right. What are we now able to do? Because one of the projects was going to drill. Now I forget what it's called, where you drill sideways, right?
The fracking?
No, not fracking.
Okay.
But it was going to drill sideways versus down, right? And it was going to be the longest sideways drill, horizontal. That's what it is, horizontal drilling.
Yes.
In the United States.
Okay.
Right? So there was some, but to be able to pull that off, have it work, have all the partners walk away saying this was the greatest project I ever worked on.
Amazing.
So everybody was up for that. But frequently we don't articulate the future, remember context.
Sure.
Right? So what's our why that's so important that it will turn out in a way that gives us a platform for anything else we want to do.
Podcasts are so popular, even monkeys are doing it.
75% of Americans listen to podcasts monthly. That's 210 million people in the United States alone. And yes, podcasts are profitable. Joe Rogan is making $30 million per year. Your content, your knowledge is worth sharing. Don't just dream it, do it. Visit andycostafilms.com/podcast and turn your content into leads.
So actually, we recently did this with our own little company. We didn't have any vendors in on this one, right? But we took a day. Now, we are a small company, so this is a different order of magnitude than it might be for other companies. But we took a day to look at every process, every piece of software we use, every subscription we have, the way that we work together, who uses what and how, and actually have a whole conversation about whether or not the way that we were working was going to help get us to the future that we are already committed to.
That is interesting.
Right? And lots of really great stuff came out of that. Like, I didn't even know some of the stuff other people were using. Also, the stuff that I use has been cobbled together over the years, which now makes no sense to the people who work with me, right? So it was useful for us to really do this. But those kinds of meetings are not the kinds of meetings that people tend to do because they're busy.
So what was the outcome? Did you streamline some of the systems, eliminate some of the systems?
Absolutely.
I've had this conversation with some businesses, and I think so over time, especially with a lot of our data collection now on our files and our individual computers at work. And so if you take a company with, let's say, 500 employees, they all have space on the servers. They take up space. Over time, employees don't delete anything, but they don't recognize that actually costs money for you to continue adding more space for them to store items that they never see. And how do you create a strategy around streamlining that?
Exactly.
The problem, I think, over time, we just keep building more and more complexity in a business that might not need to be there. And no one ever cleans it up.
No.
Which is really fascinating that you took that moment to clean up that process.
And I think about it very simply. It's like if you think that you're going to be able to just keep adding stuff to your pantry and not get rid of the stuff that expired 10 years ago, you're wrong.
Right.
It won't work. You won't be able to find what you already have in there that is good unless it sits right on the front, right? And it's not healthy for you to do that. It's not useful for you to do that. And it creates mental clutter as well.
Right.
So this is like a clean out the pantry. We looked at every subscription too, and we went, you know what? We have 4 subscriptions that basically do the same thing.
Right.
Which ones are we really going to use?
Exactly. Yeah. And you're right. So when I look at kind of the business operations, those are some of the first things I'm analyzing. But people storing data that they don't need. Same with email, storing data that they do not need or don't lose. Some companies have an auto delete policy around 30 days. But all of those add up as expenses. If you have a lot of subscriptions that are auto renewal, the person leaves the company, it auto renews. No one knows why they had the subscription. How do you clean it up? And those are great ways to save a company money and not impact the business.
That's right.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, what it does impact is you have to be willing to take the time to do it.
To do the analysis.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I recently led a session with one of our clients. The company reorged, and the leader that I was working with said, my team has changed. I want to bring everybody together, and I want to really create something for the future. Right. So we spent a day. We created a future that people were excited about, and then I said, okay, now who's going to do what to make this happen? And this was a very big surprise to me. Never in all 30 years that I have been doing this have I had this happen, where the leader said at the end of the day, I wasn't expecting there'd be any more work for us out of this. Like, how do you think the future gets built? Like, if you just keep doing what you're doing, this won't work.
Correct.
Right? Like there has to be actions that go with this, right? So those are the 2 things that companies tend to think are good ideas but won't make the time for. 1, have the meeting in the first place so we can really examine all this. And 2, follow up with the work that has to be done based on what we found.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
I had an employee engagement survey that I implemented at one organization. It was done by a research company. And I was really pleased. I built a lot of goodwill in the organization really quick. We had a 90+% completion rate in our first year.
Wow, that's unusual.
It's highly unusual. And I'm told that even in established engagement surveys, that if you get 50, 60% participation, you're doing well. But to hear you describe what you've described on the engagement piece and so out of that, as you mentioned, comes action. You don't do the engagement and then let it sit on a shelf.
No.
You do the engagement and then you go back and say, all right, these are the 5 that we want to work on this year and maybe 5 next year, but you have to take action and work towards either implementing or making changes or integrating some of the concepts into the organization.
Absolutely. This is why we rarely do a one-off.
Okay.
So once in a while, if I do a speaking engagement, that might be a one-off.
Sure.
Hopefully it won't be. Not because we would like the business, which we would, but because it won't be useful for the company to have spent the money to have me come and talk.
Gotcha.
Right? Having celebrity people come and inspire you and all that, that's fun. It truly is. I enjoy it. Like, oh, I got to see Oprah. Right. I love that stuff. Right. But if it doesn't cause people to do anything differently than they were doing before, it is not a good use of your money.
Right.
So all of our engagements occur over time. And the reason for that is so that we can support people in starting the practices and experiments, and then establishing what needs to get sustained over time. And by the way, I won't even do a coaching engagement that's not at least 1 year long.
Okay.
Why is that? Because people have massive transformation in 6 months. And then they think, I'm really good. I want to try this on my own. And the truth is they are in really good shape by then. But they are not in the sustaining phase yet.
Correct.
So I've taken away them having to think about rehiring me by simply making it a year-long thing to begin with. And then by the time we're done at a year, they have sustained their practices, and generally they're on to what they're now going to work on, which they couldn't have even thought about before we did the work that we started with, right?
I love it.
So we are all about action. And we're about action that's sustainable, not just more doing.
Right. No, I like that a lot. It's sometimes if you go to the big consulting agencies, they'll give you a nice, fancy, well thought out report. Mm-hmm. But you do need that ability to help people fully implement it and integrate it into their culture.
That's right. And right now, the big companies, the very big consulting firms, are realizing that AI can do all those reports.
Right.
It can gather the data and it can do the reports, right? So now what are they going to offer?
Right.
All right, well, we never did it that way, right? We can give you a fancy report or two, maybe not with quite the, for sure not with quite the detail that some of the big boys can.
Right.
But what we do work on is what is the human connection and the human dynamic, not just what are the numbers on the report, because the numbers on the report are there because of the human dynamic. But if you go about trying to just do surgery on the numbers and you don't pay attention to or really go to work on the human dynamic, it's not going to be worth the money that you spent on it.
Right. Now, so as we kind of wrap up the second time with this, thank you. If I would love to see you at a speaking engagement somewhere. I just think it would be so much fun. What is your walk-up line if you're getting ready to speak to an audience of, let's say, 10,000 people or whatever the size of it? Do you have kind of a go-to that?
Yeah. It's kind of funny, though. So here it is. It's like, okay, I am 66 years old. I could be retired. But you know what? I have a mic. And I'm here, so we're going to get to work. That's what I say. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's not that original, but I don't have to be here.
Right.
I am here because I love what I do, because I am committed to people taking action, and I'm committed to them not just being busy with doing, but conscious doing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So if you had to leave our Business Decoded audience with some of your top quotes or sayings or actions, not to give away everything because they need to read the book and they need to hire you.
Yeah.
But what would some of those be for that? Maybe let's say it's a startup person that needs to hear some of what they need to hear. They hadn't reached 200 employees yet. What would you give them? How do you help them make that journey to get to 200 employees? What Business Decoded ideas would you suggest to them?
One, evaluate your business deeply for at least 2 days with your senior team, whoever those people are, at least once a year. Do a shorter evaluation that's a day long, once a quarter. Where are we? What's happening? What's our real current reality? Current reality and your aspired reality are two very different things.
Sure.
And particularly when you're a small business, you are likely living in your aspired reality, not your real reality. The real reality is get together all your numbers. Where are you now? Not where are you headed?
Okay.
Where are you right now?
Right.
And does that match the trajectory that you created for where you were aspiring to be?
Right.
The other part is people mostly tell you what their aspired values are, not their as-lived values.
Okay.
So people say, no, my number one value is my family. Great. How many nights a week are you putting your children to bed?
That's interesting.
Yeah. That is not your as-lived value.
Okay.
Your as-lived value is something about your work. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't kid yourself, right? Just know what the real scoop is. And if it really is family, and you are not living that, you are not in what we call radiant integrity, where everything about your heart, your brain, your gut is so in congruence that you shine from the inside out. You can't shine from the inside out if you are not living the values that you say you value. And that's okay as long as you look at, what do I really value then? What am I really spending my time on? And that's true for the company as well. If the company says we value the environment, we value our people, but we are making our people work till 10 o'clock every night or work weekends or something like that, no, you don't value. You value your people as cogs in your machine. So let's get real about all of that rather than having a thought that it's one way when it's really not. So if that one thing I could leave people with is look at what your real reality is, what you're really doing, what the match or mismatch is between what you say you value and what your actions would say you value.
For me, that's really profound. I think some people might not completely understand the premise that you can still have high expectations for your employees and find still the right balance in treating them like humans and people in your business because it's so important. I had one scenario where there's a new CEO that came into an organization. I was working closely with him. We were preparing for a big event, but we were walking around the office at 5:30 p.m. on a Friday. And he looks at the desk for our team and he says, "Where is everyone? They should be here." I said, "It's 5:30 on a Friday." They didn't know they needed to be here because you were going to walk around. But I think you're right. There was that bit of a disconnect between you saying that you value these people and then you're expecting them to do something that might not be consistent with that value.
Exactly. And if people can get congruent, if you can get congruent in yourself, are you personally fully aligned? Like, are you doing what your heart knows to be true? Are you listening to your intellectual clarity? And are you paying attention to how you navigate through the world? We call that kind of your gut, right? Your gut instinct, right? If those three are out of alignment, like you're doing stuff that doesn't match your heart, or your brain tells you to do something, but you're not doing it, right? If those are not congruent in you, it can't be congruent in your company.
Absolutely.
So then, once you're congruent there, how do you get your company to be congruent in the company's heart, the company's way of knowing how to move forward, and the company's brilliance in whatever their content or their actual work is? And if you can make that happen, then you and your company will shine so brightly from the inside out. People go, I don't know what they're doing, but as Sally said in When Harry Met Sally, I'll have some of that, right? So
I love it.
Yeah.
Andrea, thank you again for sharing your wisdom, your insight, your expertise, your heart and passion for what you do with our audience. And if you're listening to the program, you certainly need to take an opportunity to share this program with anyone in your circle of friends and family. It's been a delight having you on again.
So here's one last tip for your audience. If you are listening to Business Decoded and you are not writing anything down, not just this session, but all of your sessions, then you are not going to get the value out of all of the work that you are doing. So that's what your audience needs to pay attention to is people on here. Ronnie doesn't have people on here who don't have something to say. So if you're not writing it down, you are not going to get all the value of it. So take notes.
Take notes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And
You're
taking
welcome.
note is doing.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
That's the
It's
action
doing.
part of this. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you
You're
so
such
much
a delight.
for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Thank you for listening to Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. Please be sure to subscribe and share and stay tuned for more incredible Business Decoded episodes.